Hi, everyone, and welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us today. In honor of Black History Month, the Celtics and TD Bank partnered up to highlight Black achievements and excellence. Today's celebration includes a panel on the importance of representation in the workplace, featuring employees of color from the NBA, Boston Celtics, Maine Red Claws, and TD Bank. They'll share their insights about their career experiences, the significance of diversity and inclusion in the workplace, and the importance of celebrating Black History Month all year. And to moderate today's panels, we have the Executive Vice President, Chief People and Inclusion Officer at the National Basketball Association joining us. Everyone, please welcome in Oris Stewart. And Oris is responsible for leading the combined human resources and diversity and inclusion groups. He oversees diversity and inclusion strategies within the NBA, the WNBA, NBA G League, and NBA 2K League and its teams. He provides best practices and leadership to the league's offices and teams by overseeing efforts to increase the number of minority and women-owned suppliers, as well as supporting efforts to attract, develop, and retain diverse talent. Oris, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll hand it off to you now.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you for that introduction, and more so, thank you for making me part of this important conversation at such an important time. I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you, and I want to welcome three incredible panelists, all from the Boston Celtics, and please join me in this conversation. First, Justin Brown, an account executive for the Celtics, Tiffany Filial, who is a member experience executive, and then Robin Neal, a digital marketing coordinator. Welcome to the three of you. Thank you for joining me in this conversation. So let's get started with just getting to know each of you better, in particular, understanding your roles. And so, Justin, if we could start with you, let us know what your role is with the organization.
Absolutely. Thanks, Oris. As you mentioned, I'm an account executive in the sales department. So during normal times, that was selling ticket packages and premium experiences to individuals and businesses in the New England area. This is my sixth season and certainly has been one unlike any other at this point. And we've just had to continue to reinvent ourselves during this time, but hopefully the light's at the end of the tunnel and we're having fans back within a couple of months is our goal. So hope to be there soon.
We all hope to be there. What an incredible year it's been. Tiffany, tell us a bit about your role.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me on today, Oris. And thanks for everyone for joining in on this afternoon's panel. I'm a part of the member experience team, and our team, we service and manage year-round memberships. We also focus on annual retention, as well as the development and execution of our benefits programs and our game day experiences. This is my fifth season with the Celtics organization, and it's been good. So, I'm very grateful to be here and very, grateful to work with such an amazing staff.
All right, thank you, Tiffany. And then Robin, let us know a bit about your role. Thank you.
Of course. So as the digital marketing coordinator, I help on both the email front and social media front. So any communication that you see come to you as a fan, whether that be tickets that we have going on sale, information that we need to relay, as well as on the social media front, helping on game nights with posting highlights or any content on our social platforms, I'm assisting in both of those areas. So it's a lot of work, but I'm very grateful to not only work for the organization, but to be a part of this panel as well and talk about my experience.
Awesome. Well, three incredible roles that you play, and I want to talk a little bit about them. So Tiff, if you don't mind if I call you Tiff, I hope
I
that's
prefer
okay.
it, so thank you.
Okay, so Tiff, you've been with the Celtics 5 years. Tell us about the experiences that have had the most significant impact on you during your time at the Celtics, or even more broadly, but specifically during your time at the Celtics.
Yeah, first off, I want to say that I work with an amazing team. I've had, some awesome mentors throughout the organization. I've had positive experiences as well as, some negative experiences. Being the only person of color can be challenging. in such a big department. But I've had, speaking towards the positive, experiences, I've had members who have pulled me aside at specific events and just, acknowledge the fact that I am the only person of color, and, kind of give me that praise and, big me up. Like, it's nice to see a young lady like yourself. They ask me questions like, how long have you been with the organization? Do you love what you do? Do you love your team? And I always speak highly of my team. They're more like a family. And, I hope to see more people of color in our department. So when I see people like Robin and Cash and Tiff B and, Marina around the organization, it makes me feel happy, Allison Feaster, because, we need that. Representation is very important, in any organization. I just hope to have, more positive experiences and hope to see more diversity within my department, as well as the Celtics organization and the Maine Red Claws.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Tiff. And you mentioned Robin, and you described your how positive it is to see her in the office. And so, Robin, let me come to you. And I think it's clear that we're all role models to someone, right? We are, regardless of who we are, what we do, where we are in the moment, someone's watching us. And so share with us what it's like. How do you see yourself as a role model, and what it's like to be considered a role model?
Well, first, thank you, Tiff. I love seeing them in the office as well. So that's great. It's always so heartwarming to know that I have that support system and women of color that I can talk to about anything that may be going on in my group or just in life in general. But she touched on something that I think is very important, and that's the fact that representation is key. Like, I'm a woman from the west side of Chicago, and from what you see in the media or in the news, like, there's not really much positive that they have to say. And it's very rare for people to come out of what they would say is the hood. But I think it's important for me to not just see women like Allison, for example, who took us under her wing immediately upon meeting us and just leads us in the right direction and is always a source of motivation and encouragement. But I want to also be that for the young women from my city that went to my school that just look at me on social media or whatever platform it may be, because I want them to see what's possible. I want them to see what they're able to accomplish, not just as a woman of color, but someone that's intelligent and that knows what she's doing and talking about when it comes to sports. So representation is key. Having mentors and people that are in your corner is key, especially when they look like you. It just makes you feel a lot safer when it comes to expressing yourself to them.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for that, Robin. I want to stay on this theme of role models and being inspired by the folks that you see that you can touch, or perhaps even folks that you know of, maybe that you've never met, maybe that you've only heard about. So Justin, if you don't mind me turning to you, just to share, who are your role models, or who are some of the most influential people that have inspired you or been important to you as you've gone, through your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Horace. I would say I'm fortunate for the biggest Black role model in my life to be my dad. And he's evidenced that both in his occupation and personally as a father to me. He was a first-generation immigrant, and from a very early age, he knew he wanted to serve. He wanted to be a doctor. I think he has a quote in his sixth grade yearbook or something about it. So it really, he's got the receipts for it. It goes back. He was the first in his family to put himself through college and medical school, and as he's told me, one of the main motivations for that was that Black doctors are extremely underrepresented in this country, and people of color experience large disparities and worse outcomes with the American healthcare system. And so he's really dedicated his life to addressing this, and just as a testament of who he is and what he's done for his work. It's obvious. In addition to performing the abilities that doctors do, he does things like planting gardens in his patients' backyards if they don't have access to good fruit and vegetables easily. He runs after school programs. So just he's really proven to me and everyone that he's touched what going the extra mile looks like. And he's had an even greater impact working in the particular communities that he's sought out to spend that time doing. So that would be the short answer. And then personally, obviously, he's been a really good dad. to me, and just teaching the values of diligence and integrity, discipline. And I certainly wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for him. So that might be the stereotypical answer, but fortunately for me, that's what I would have to say.
Well, Justin, I appreciate that. I would say that's profound. And, as I think about the fact that we're having this conversation during Black History Month, and, Black History Month is about celebrating the contributions of Black Americans, Black people across the board. Just so far in just this short conversation, we've talked about two people of inspiration, right? That Robin and your father. And so, Black History Month is about celebrating that inspiration wherever it happens all around. So let's talk, more specifically about Black History Month itself. And Tiff, let me come to you and just ask you really simply, what does Black History Month mean to you?
Yeah, honestly, no one has ever asked me this question. So I had to think about it really, really hard. And my answer might be basic, but Black history is everything to me. I am a product of Black history. I come from Black history. My ancestors, my grandparents who are still living today have experienced, things in their time with racism and segregation. So hearing stories about my great grandfather's, house being burnt down in Alabama by a group of white people because, he was doing really well in that time, for himself. And obviously, like a Black man succeeding is, frowned upon. So Black history to me is everything. I am Black history, for the generation that's going to come after me. I can't remember which actor or actress said it on one of their interviews, but, Black history, Black people, we are the heart and soul of culture. From the music we listen to, the food we eat, the clothes we wear, like our style, we bring something to culture. So for me, it's everything. I hope that, answers your question.
Well, it certainly does. And the thing that I'm going to take away most from what you just shared, and I'm so appreciative, is I am Black history. I mean, that should be a poster somewhere, certainly. And I appreciate that. Justin, I'm going to come to you. And then Robin, I want to talk to you about celebrating Black History Month, not only in February, but all year round. But first, Justin, let me ask you, what does Black History Month mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as Tiffany said, Black history is American history. It's not a separate category that we should only focus on this one month, but it's a year-round thing that has impacted who we are today, people of color, Black people, and everyone else that calls himself an American. So I think it's just part of our story as a whole and should be treated as such.
All right, brilliant. And so, Robin, I know that at the Celtics, the focus is making sure that Black history is something, to the point Justin just made, that we celebrate all year round, because Black history is, as he said, American history. And so why is that important to continue to focus on this all year and to keep the conversation going and keep it alive?
If you look at our roster, it's majority African American men. And for us to not celebrate them all 12 months of the year and only focus on one month, that's doing us a disservice. It's doing them a disjustice, because we're always looking at them to be entertainment, to be on our television screens when we need them. But what about when they need us? What about when they need a platform to further push their message or their initiatives that they're working on? It's beyond 28 days. We should focus on the entire year, because we aren't just Black this month. We're Black year round. We aren't just Black from 8:30 a to 5:30 p. This is 24 hours of our day, what we're living all of the time. So I think focusing on the 12 months of the calendar year, and that being our main priority in terms of promoting, celebrating, and uplifting everyone of color within our organization that's on our roster, that's in this country, that is what's most important. That's what I'm constantly pushing. That's what I'm leaning on other people on this call to help continue to push. So we're important, not just this month and not just on this call, but I hope this reaches well beyond just this month and can focus on that for the entire year.
I so appreciate that. And so let me ask each of you for just a closing thought as we kind of wrap up this discussion. a closing thought about Black History Month and what you hope evolves from these conversations, or just a closing thought in general about the moment and the time we're in? So Justin, I'll start with you. Any closing comments?
Sure, thanks, Horace. I think in the last year, I've had more conversations with just friends, coworkers, and family about race in America, about what being Black is like than I had in all my years combined before that. I've had friends reach out that I've never really discussed this with. So I think that's really important. Continue to educate yourself and have those conversations whenever it's possible. We just need to get people to the point where they realize how racism and white supremacy still impacts the systems that we live in today. And I think this past year, even though it's been a painful one, has helped us get closer to that goal, but we need to continue to keep pushing forward.
It's been such a challenging year, and to your point, it's created conversations that otherwise we might not have had, or might not have been compelled to have. And so I've got to agree with you that there's a bit of a silver lining in what's been a really challenging year. And I'm hopeful that we will continue to take advantage of the moment that it's created for us. So thank you for that, Justin. Tiffany.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna, go off of what Robin said earlier about not just being Black, 1 month. I'm a Black woman 24/7, and just as Justin said, continue to educate yourself. Ask questions, check on your Black friends. Not just when things are down. Be open-minded and expose yourself to different things. When things are back to normal, come hang out with us at the cookouts. Come to our family dinners. Come to church with us. Bible study, whatever it is that you feel you need to do to learn more about our culture and our history, and just to get to know us as people.
Thank you for that, Tiffany. And Robin, bring us home.
The last thing that I'd like to say is see us. A lot of people say, oh, I don't see color, and they use that as their reasoning or excuse behind like not being educated or saying that they're on our side. And I want you to see us. I want you to see the color. I want you to see our shade. I want you to see what we have to offer and what we bring to the table, because we're incredible. Like Tiff said, we're the culture. A lot of these dances, the music, the food, like everything, it came from us. So acknowledge that and see us, and don't just use it when it's beneficial for this month. Like see us all of the time, because myself, everyone on this panel, you yourself, or it's all incredible, and we have a lot to offer. And I just want the world to see that and acknowledge that.
Well, I can't thank you enough. And Robin, truer words have not been spoken. You are all incredible and have been incredibly thoughtful in your comments for this panel. And so I just want to share a few things I'm going to take away. First of all, I am Black history. That is profound. Second of all, that these are conversations that should be happening all year round, and that we should be seizing this moment to have those conversations. And Justin, I'm appreciative that you talked about your father, who's had such a profound impact on your life, and I know many others. If I had to answer that question, I'd probably say the same thing. My father, whose name is the same as mine, and who I've been so inspired by. And I think it just makes the point, Robin, to your comment that, and Tiffany, yours, that we can get to know each other and we can learn from each other and we can build relationships, and through those relationships, we can accomplish amazing things. And so let's take this opportunity to get to know each other better, to build kinship, and to march forward together. So incredibly thankful of your support and your comments and everything you've shared. And we're going to let you go. We're going to have another conversation with some of your colleagues as well. But thanks so much again for all that you shared.
Thanks, Oris.
Thanks for having us, Oris.
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you, colleagues, for your participation and just being so open and honest and sharing your personal stories. It was truly wonderful. For this next portion, we will be focusing on diversity and inclusion. And Oris, I'll let you take it from here with the second panel.
Absolutely. Let me first start by just mentioning, diversity and inclusion are words that often are used together interchangeably. They're certainly on the the tongues of folks every day, certainly in the media. And I think often they're not well understood or well defined. And so we're going to talk about what they mean. And we're going to get our panelists to really explore these topics for us a little bit better. And we have another three incredible panelists that I want to introduce to you. First, DeJuan Eubanks, the Vice President of the Boston Celtics and President of the Maine Red Claws. And DeJuan was G League Executive of the Year, as I understand, 2019 to 2020. So DeJuan, thank you for joining us and welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Horace.
I want to then introduce Ms. Allison Feaster, Vice President, Player Development and Organizational Growth for the Boston Celtics. And just a quick word about Allison, who was a former colleague of mine at the NBA League office. But many of you will be aware of this, but for those of you that aren't, she was the first athlete of any sport to be Ivy League Player of the Year for 3 times or 3 years. And so, Allison, welcome to the discussion.
Thank you, Oris. Pleasure to be here.
Good to have you. And third, I want to introduce Shelly Silva, Senior Vice President and Head of Social Impact for TD Bank. Shelly, I understand you're from Philly?
Yes, I am. Born and raised, 215.
215. So, you know, we certainly have that in common. West Philly, born and raised. And so, good to make that connection. And so thrilled to have the three of you here for this conversation about diversity and inclusion. And so I'm going to open it up. Whoever wants to jump in just with this first question, what is or what are diversity and inclusion? Who wants to tackle that?
I'll jump in.
Allison, go ahead.
I first want to say how proud I am of Justin, Robin, and Tiff for being, valiant voices for this organization. And I think it starts there. I think diversity and inclusion really starts with seeing what you can be. It's about having representation, and inclusion is about taking deliberate action to make sure that representation is there. I think it's about exposing oneself, in life and in the workplace, and actively seeking that representation of voices across many areas, but not limited to race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religious affiliation, generation, disability, et cetera, thinking style. And I think inclusion is really about listening to those voices and deliberately creating equitable and inclusive spaces. As it pertains to our organization, you look at these examples of, creations of ERTs, our company-wide initiative, social justice initiative, Celtics United, our year-long celebration of Black history. Those are deliberate actions to hear those voices, to seek, those voices and ask for input. And then I think a piece of diversity and inclusion is understanding that we're not perfect, that we have to have a willingness to grow and to learn about others and to support others. I think it should be our goal to be global citizens and to really seek out those allies and be an ally to those around us. So that for me is what diversity and inclusion is all about.
Well, Allison, so it's clear this is a master class. And so I'm really appreciative for that definition, those definitions. DeJuan, let me ask you to build on that definition if you have anything else to share.
Well, I mean, considering I'm on the panel with Allison, it's always a privilege to be sitting next to her on these things. And so I concur with her regarding the other panelists as well, too. We're a very fortunate organization to have such great young talent in place to really help in these efforts and all. But, if I were to build on what Allison was saying, I think diversity and inclusion, and more importantly to me around inclusion, is the action behind it. For so many years, we've heard people talking about and checking the box of what diversity means. And, oftentimes it's a unconscious bias that, all right, we have someone, we're good, let's continue to move on with our day, And so I just build upon it in a sense of saying inclusion being the key factor there, in the sense of it's about action. No longer can you just talk the talk, you also have to walk the walk. And in order for us to be an organization that's doing so, we need to have people that represent that, to what Allison was saying, across the board, not just racially, but gender and everything else that she had mentioned in that way. And so that's what I was saying in order to build upon it, is that the fact that we're at a point in time now where action speaks louder than words, and it's very important for us to be able to create an environment within our workplace where we can show that we're making the chance to go ahead and move forward with our DEI work in a way in which it's meaningful.
Brilliant, brilliant. So diversity is essential contribution to our success, and it's about much more than the things that you see or think you can see, those primary dimensions. I appreciate you making that clear. Inclusion is really, it takes energy, is what I heard you say, right? Inclusion takes energy to apply, it takes action to really get the benefits from diversity. And so Shelly, if I could just ask you, since we've got a solid working definition of diversity and inclusion, why is it important? Why are we focused on it? Why do we care? We've heard a little bit of that, but could you further illuminate why these are such important, critical topics?
I think we've all heard that diverse teams perform better, right? And at the end of the day, I'm with a sports business, right? And so you want to have diverse players. Not everybody should be wanting to handle the ball, right? People have to want to do different things. And we've learned through diversity and inclusion work that bringing people around the table with diverse experiences help drive business results. But I think it's even more than that. Right? We live in a diverse world. We want to serve the organization, at least from the perspective of a bank, right? Like we want to represent the communities in which we operate. And so part of talking to those communities are having people that have those lived experiences. And so it goes beyond just having diverse people there, because we know that you may not necessarily have diverse experiences just because people are diverse, right? And so it goes back to what you talked about, the action, the intentionality. And so for us at TD Bank, right, like diverse teams perform better, diverse teams get better results, diverse teams reflect the communities in which we operate, and that's what we strive towards.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, okay, diversity, we got this definition, right? And we know inclusion is as important, maybe sometimes more important than diversity, but they're both important. Shelly, you said it's about getting the best out of our people. It's about making the right decisions. It's about being intimate with your customers, our fans. So then, and everyone knows that, then why aren't we more diverse? Like as an organization, I mean, I'm not talking about the Celtics or TD. I'm talking about just pick an organization. Why do organizations tend to not be so diverse? If everyone gets it, it makes sense. There's data supporting it. Allison, let me ask you, what's getting in the way?
I think we are getting in the way. I think it takes people in power to take deliberate steps to make changes and not be afraid, not have this fear of the other, and have a willingness to build a more stronger, inclusive culture. I think it's that action piece that we're missing.
Dewan, what's getting in the way?
Inequity, itself. I mean, we don't know any different because of the way we've been reared, for decades and centuries in that sense, and I think that coupled with getting in our own way is part of the overall reason, is that it's just never been that way, and so now the movement that we're looking to make is going to take a massive effort in order for it to become the norm. It hasn't been the norm in that sense is what I would say.
And so, Shelly, I want to ask you about a specific issue called unconscious bias, right? Because, Allison and both Allison and Dewan talked about us being stuck, right? We know what we know, and we have our patterns and our practices, and we do what we do, and we keep getting what we get. And so it's really about how do we break through? And so tell us a little bit about unconscious bias and the role it plays in getting in the way of us being more effective with diversity and inclusion.
So, Oris, I believe words have power. And so I was at a presentation a few weeks ago when we were talking about unconscious bias, and the facilitator said, we're actually harming ourselves by saying unconscious, right? Because when something's unconscious, people think, oh, it's not harmful. It just happens. There's nothing I can do about it. So I've changed my language to call it unchecked bias.
Okay.
right? You know, people are doing it. We're not challenging them and we're not checking them on it, right? And so part of what happens is it's easy to go with what you know, right? Like for everybody, for everything. But unfortunately, when you do it in hiring, when you do it in making contracts, when you do it in things that actually impact how the organization is built, you get what you get, the same thing repeated over and over again. And so again, it goes back to the intentionality, but it also goes back to challenging organizations to say, we have to make a different decision. Don't pick up the phone and call your college classmate. Because if I picked up the phone and called every college classmate, my whole team at TD Bank would be Black women, right? Like it would just be all my girlfriends. We'd be sitting around. We'd have fun. We'd probably get a lot done. We're really smart, but it would be all people that look like me. And we have to say to each other, we have to do something different to get a different result. So do you go and reach out to a diversity recruiting agency? Do you ask Black colleagues to reach out to their friends and really take those references seriously? I think we have to stop saying unconscious. I think we need to call it unchecked. And then I think we need to check people on it.
Wow. So I wrote that down. And I hope you don't mind if I use that, I will attribute it to you, but clearly,
I'll send you the name. I'll send you the name.
All right. I think that is absolutely profound. To your point, we had an unconscious bias training, but we thought the same thing, Shelly, and we instead called it conscious inclusion. So we flipped it because it wasn't about just this awareness of this thing that kind of gets in the way, but I can't really do anything about it. No, we can take action and consciously be inclusive. In fact, we can build an instinct for inclusion, which is, ultimately our objective. So thank you for that unchecked bias. Please do so I can give the appropriate attribution when I use it. And so, these are, it's difficult. You've all said it, that it's challenging to change. It's challenging to lean into new behaviors and to do things differently so we get different results. And one of the things that, and Justin talked about this a little bit earlier, one of the things that's challenging is for us to have these kind of conversations with colleagues. And so I want to talk specifically about, the conversation. I want to go a little bit further beyond just diversity and inclusion. I want to talk about one conversation in particular, race, that we don't often have. And I want to just get your thoughts on, number one, why is it so difficult to talk about race? And, why is it that we don't get there very often, even in times like this? So DeJuan, you mind me passing that question to you first?
Sure. And I will say that my primary thought behind that is the fact of, we're very uncomfortable talking about it, in a public setting in that way. And, I'll take it one step further in saying that we're afraid to become vulnerable with one another as well, and that's very important when we begin to have these type of conversations, is the fact of really being able to be our true selves, which if we have a diverse environment, we're able to walk in and be our true selves. And that's something that we haven't had as Black individuals when we go into corporate America, is really being able to be our true selves in that way. Yet, if you listen to the earlier panel, we have so much influence over the culture and the environments that we work in, and that we pursue as consumers and things of that nature. And so I would say that's part of the reason in the beginning, is just people being afraid to have the conversation because they're uncomfortable, but also they don't want to go that next step of being vulnerable.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Allison, let me pass to you. Why do we have such a difficult time talking about race?
I think it's because, as DeJuan said, it's this uncomfortableness, a discomfort with our history, and confronting, what we've all lived, this shared experience we've all lived, this sort of imbalance of power, I could say. But I'm so thankful to be a part of an organization that encourages this type of conversation. Unfortunately, with the murder of George Floyd that we all witnessed earlier last year, we were all thrust into the conversation, whether we liked it or not. And, what's come of that conversation, of that tragedy, has been something very, very fruitful. So I'm really encouraged by the conversations we're having now. I'm really encouraged with our direction. and the open-mindedness and inclusiveness that we all seem to be sharing. So looking forward to continuing the conversation in our workplace.
I appreciate that. And I too am thrilled that we're having this in this moment, and that we are, I think, just by virtue of the fact we're having this conversation, some of the attendees are now going to have this conversation in their own homes or with their own networks. And so I think we can, even by this, inspire this conversation all around us. And so, Shelly, let me ask you what else organizations can do, should be doing to advance this conversation around race, the conversations around diversity and inclusion, and to move more towards action. What else should and can organizations do?
So I can just share at TD Bank during the summer with the murder of George Floyd and the racial unrest, we took a three-pronged approach, right? First, we have to acknowledge what's going on in the world, right? Like, I think people, because people are uncomfortable, sometimes they shy away from acknowledging the pain, the suffering that the Black colleagues were experiencing during the summer. So as a bank, we acknowledged it. Then we said, okay, we're going to empathize, right? Like it's not happening to you, it's happening to all of us. We're all living through this together. You may experience it differently, and we're going to show empathy. But then we said we have to do action. And so standing up a resource group, a business resource group with specific tactics and strategies that are measurable. What I've always encouraged people when we talk about diversity and inclusion initiatives, these are business problems, right? And so if you had a major tax issue, you would get the best tax accountant you could find to come in and represent you, right? You're not going to go to H&R Block necessarily. You're going to really go and get a white shoe law firm and come in. Well, there's experts in this work that need to be hired that can come in and help you develop training for your employees, help you stand up the best resource groups, put measurable tactics on representation, create meaningful training programs, move from, allyship to sponsorship, and those kinds of things. So we did that. But then for us, we doubled down on our commitment in the communities, right? And for us, we said we need to do more in terms of action. We're a bank. We do have resources. So we need to support small businesses and women and Black-owned businesses during this recovery, because we had two big pandemics, right? We had two big crises this summer, COVID and racial unrest. And they came together and they had really destroyed some Black communities. And without organizations such as ours making meaningful investments to the recovery, it's not going to happen. And so that's how we're acting.
That's profound, and I want to talk a little bit about the organization itself, because you described how you've acted, and I want you to describe as a panel, what does an organization that is not only acting externally and making a difference with its customers and its community, as you just described, Shelly, but what does that organization feel like internally? The point being, what does an inclusive organization feel like? And Allison, you talked about how good you feel about the fact that the Celtics are an organization that not only has these conversations but facilitates them more broadly. But let me just ask you first, Dewan, what to you would exemplify an inclusive organization? What would it look like? How would it feel?
Well, I think it's what Shelly began off saying, the acknowledgement before even acknowledging, being bold and not afraid to step forth and, draw a line in the sand regarding the issue in itself, and that would be one thing that I've spoke about time and time again when organizations have approached me about what is it that we can do. We have to make the determination that, one, you're going to be bold. And when you make the statement, you're not shying away from it because of your constituents and consumers that might be like, oh, well, what's going on? And so I think to have an organization be perceived as being inclusive or towing the line is what I would say I interpreted your question, is the fact that they're leaning in and they're being bold with it. And behind that comes the action and the support in its way. And it's from the top down. And that's what's been the beauty of our organization is, I think, when the situation happened over the summer, from the top down, we received that guidance and that lean in factor as to saying, this is something that we need to be a part of. in a sense, and so I was proud to be a part of our organization to experience that, firsthand, in a manner in which, coming in as an acquisition, the Red Claws to the Celtics, not really knowing the organization and how they would handle big issues such as this. I've been pleasantly surprised and shocked about everything, and happy that I'm a part of this organization because of that.
Oh, terrific, terrific. Allison, let me come to you and ask you, what does an inclusive organization look like, feel like to you? How will we know? We're all on this journey, right? We're all on this journey. And how will we know that we're getting there?
Yeah, I'm certainly coming from an organization that was super deliberate, at your helm, the NBA, that really exhausted, action to make sure employees felt at home within that organization. And, as Dewan said, our organization is definitely growing in that direction. You take, a small micro look at what we've done as an organization through Celtics United. Over 3/4 of the organization has raised its hand to volunteer its time to drive a social justice initiative forward, to use this brand to make an impact in our greater community to combat social justice and racial inequities. To me, that's about inclusion. That's about, listening to all voices. The creation of ERTs this year. We had our first ERT created this year. And so for me, it's making sure everybody has a safe space, making sure everyone feels a part and is heard in this organization. So that to me is what an inclusive organization looks like.
Well, love it, love it. Now, Allison, you used the term or referred to ERTs a couple of times. And so let me ask you, for those that might not be familiar, when you say ERT, what are you referring to?
I'm referring to an employee, well, it means employee resource team or group. And it's not just for, humans who identify with a certain group. It's for everyone to really contribute and to come and learn and to, take an exploration with their colleagues. So that's what ERT means to me.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Shelly, please, what does inclusion look like to you?
That's when people bring their entire self to your organization. I was reading, a colleague had posted about his anniversary at the bank, and he did the whole storytelling of how he got to the bank and the fact that he left another organization because he was being bullied. And he's a Black gay man, and he was at another organization, and somebody had found out that he was gay, and they were just harassing him. And so he came to TD Bank and started his career. And he shared that the first time he actually came out was at work. He came out at work first, not to his family, not to his friends. That tells me we've created the right environment. It doesn't happen every day, right? It's a journey for all of us. But part of it is saying to your employees, bring your entire self to us, and we will use your skills and talents for the best use of the organization. And we will work together to do that, right? And so to me, that's what it ultimately looks like. And when I read his story, I said, I have to give him credit, because I got emailed 2 people, because that's what I do. I read stuff and but I'm not saying that's, that was his story. But that to me is like what inclusion looks like in action.
One of the ways I so appreciate what each of you have shared, and as I think about what you described in terms of what inclusion looks like and how it plays out, I can certainly describe what inclusion, what you have when you don't have inclusion, and you've got individuals that are expending energy all day, every day to fit in. They are covering, they are hiding, they are suppressing elements of themselves. And just think about it. The example I'd offer is take a balloon full of air, put it in a bucket of water, or even something more bigger than that, a bathtub. And as you submerge it, the further you try to push it down and submerge it, the more energy it takes, right? So if you think about an organization that is not allowing people, as you've all said, to bring their whole selves and to be themselves, then the energy that they could be contributing to the good of the organization, they're expending some of that just to try to make it through the day. And so, we really do want to continue to have these conversations and continue to create environments in our organizations and all the ones represented by the attendees so that folks can show up and do their thing, right? And don't have to spend so much of their energy to just make it through the day. So we've just got a couple of minutes. I mean, I'd love to go on with each of you. I am inspired by your comments, inspired by your colleagues' comments in the earlier panel. And so I'll give you, if you don't mind, each 30 seconds to just share with us a closing comment that you want to leave on either the conversation that we had earlier about Black History Month or this conversation about diversity and inclusion. I'd start with you, Dewan.
Well, I would just one from the previous panelists regarding Black history being year-round. I agree. We are American history, so we shouldn't be parceled out for just 1 month. I was born in the South, and how I was raised was that Black history was taught every day in the neighborhood that I grew up in, And so, but when it comes to diversity and equity and inclusion and moving forward, it is a collaborative effort, and it's an exhausting effort now, in particular because of just the emphasis that we're all putting on it. And I would say one of the best things that came out of last summer, if there was a silver lining to it, is the fact that we all received a lens that oftentimes we put to the side that, it's so easy to put to the side. Whereas now, with the collaborative efforts, not only with our organization, but with TD Bank and others in the communities, that we're able to have that lens become constant. Imagine where we can be in the next 5, 10, 15 years when we talk about eradicating systemic racism. So I'm hopeful that this momentum and this movement continues on in a manner in which organizations such as ours, the NBA and the likes, can continue to move the needle in a substantial way. And I'm thankful for being a part of the conversation. Thank you, Oris, for joining us. And I'm thrilled to be a part of this panel with Allison and Shelly. Nice to meet you.
Nice
Look forward to continuing to work.
And I'm thrilled to be on here with you. I'm thrilled for your optimism, and I share it, and I'm gonna feed off of that. So thank you for that hopeful view of where we're headed. Allison, any closing comments from the greatest of all time, the good?
So generous. I am honored, humbled that our organization is stepping up to have this conversation. I also want to add one small but huge element to inclusion, and that is mentorship. That is leaning into our coworkers, our direct reports, all of that. I think that's a huge part of it. Once you are in an organization, and even externally, we have a responsibility as people of color here to make sure that we're representing, but to make sure we're also planting seeds and helping younger, less experienced employees grow and feel comfortable in their organization. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Allison. And Shelly, bring us home.
Oris, first of all, it's great to be on a panel with anybody from West Philly. Although I'm an uptown girl and I went to Girls High, you should have said that in the beginning because you.
I went to Central.
So, but awesome panel, really great to be with the group today. I think 3 things for me, right? Like the unconscious bias, we have to change that to unchecked. And we're leaving with the responsibility to check one another. I'm not saying physically check people, but I'm saying when you have a colleague in the meeting that says that person doesn't have executive presence, it's your obligation to say, what does that mean? Can you explain it to me? Right? So that's number 1. Number 2, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Uncomfortable doesn't mean unsafe. Uncomfortable doesn't mean dangerous. Uncomfortable doesn't mean unhealthy. Uncomfortable means, okay. So have those uncomfortable conversations. You will be better for it. And you'll be better because next time you'll feel a little more comfortable. I think lastly, Tiffany said it best. I am Black history. I love that. I'm taking it. Tiffany, I will give you credit for it because I wrote it down. And I think this Black History Month, we've learned it's great to celebrate our successes, but we need to have more conversations that focus on action, right? We have lots of ones. We have lots of firsts. And I think that's amazing. And we should talk about those 365 days a year. But let's turn our energy on Black History Month about actionable things that drive progress for Black communities. And that's what I'm leaning into this Black History Month.
Well, that's we're going to let that be our close, and we're going to drop the mic on that. And Shelly, thank you. Allison, thank you. DeJuan, thank you. And I also want to thank Justin, Tiffany, and Robin for their contribution earlier this afternoon and during their panel. Thank you all. And Amanda, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you, everyone. And I agree with you. Shelly dropped the mic there. So I'll be quick with my close. That was wonderful. And I could not agree more on wishing that we had more time with our panelists today. Just great conversations. And Oris, thank you. You did a wonderful job moderating and asking great questions. We also want to send a special thank you to TD Bank just for your partnership and continued support throughout the years. We truly had wonderful stories and insight from everyone again. So just thank you to our panelists for being so raw and open. Thanks, everyone.